Welcome to Selling in the Age of AI.
Yeah, this is good stuff. So,
Must-listen podcast for sales professionals who lean into technology without leaning on it. Dive into the future of sales with your hosts, the dynamic and inspiring Frank Somma, renowned keynote speaker, best-selling author, seminar leader, and business coach. Get ready for game-changing insights and strategies that value technology but place humanity at the top of the sales pyramid.
Trent Theroux is Chief Financial Officer, a graduate school professor of business strategy, a small business coach, and finished runner-up in the 2024 National Storytelling Competition. He was recognized by Sports Illustrated for his record-breaking 41-mile swim around Newport, Rhode Island. Following an accident which left him paralyzed, he created a foundation through the Spaulding Center in Boston to provide durable medical goods for those with spinal cord injuries. Trent funds the foundation by completing marathon swims, most recently swimming 20 miles across Block Island Sound from Montauk, New York, to a beach in Rhode Island whose name I can't say. You can say it for me in a little bit. Trent energizes rooms and educates audiences with compelling stories, actionable insights, and dynamic presence that inspires resiliency, leadership, and transformative growth in organizations. Welcome, Trent.
I haven't seen you in so long, Frank. I'm so happy to be with you today. How are you, my friend?
What's the name of that beach that I can't say?
Misquamicut. It's right near where Taylor Swift has her house.
Misquamicut. I couldn't say that with a gun to my head today. That was fantastic. So, Trent, I read your book, Swimming in the Flood, so I'm familiar with the details of your story and what prompted you to start that foundation. But would you mind recounting that story for our listeners so they get kind of a baseline of where you came from?
I will. Take just a couple of minutes.
I appreciate it.
I came home from work one night. It was about 8:30 in the morning, in the evening, and I didn't work out. I normally would. So I went to grab my kayak and I went 2 miles out to the point, turned around, and on my way back, there was a boat behind me. And so I took my paddle, I moved off to the side a little bit, and another minute later, it was still behind me, and it was coming up on me pretty quickly. And so I grabbed my paddle, and I go, hurry, hurry. And the boat didn't move. It stayed right on my line. And so I knew I had to make a quick decision here. And I decided the best way to escape was to go under the boat. If I could dive and go under the boat would go right over me.
Right.
So I rolled out of the boat, took one big breaststroke pull, and I came to appreciate the Doppler effect.
Okay.
The pitch of the engine got higher as the boat got closer.
Ah.
Then I got hit by the boat. Getting hit by a boat is like being tackled in football. It just knocks the wind right out of you. Next come the propellers. 1, 2, 3, 4 times, knocking me deeper into the water. I'd lost the air in my lungs. I tried to blow a bubble out to see which way it was, but it was a little dark. But I also realized I couldn't move my left arm and I couldn't feel my legs. And I started to paddle to the surface, and I could see the boat motoring away from me. And I knew I was in some serious trouble. I tried to scream, but it was sending electricity through me. I reached around the back and touched my exposed ribs. But what scared me the most was I couldn't tell how much blood I was losing in the dark water. And the thought that came through my mind was that the children are going to find about this tomorrow in the morning news. Dad washes ashore. And so I had a look to the east. There was Nayet Point and some houses there. And so it's about 400 yards, which I was a swimmer in school. That would have been about 4 minutes of swimming. But now with just one arm, I'm not sure how long that would take. So I start stroking towards, and then the boat stopped. It parked. So I parked, watching him. And the boat turned, but they didn't turn towards me. He turned a little bit the other way, but coming down the bay. They were going slowly. They were trolling, looking for something. So I had this, what I didn't appreciate was the most important decision of my life to make. Do I continue swimming towards the beach? And if I get to the shore, how do I get to a house with only one arm? Or do I try to consider swimming deeper into the bay? And what if they don't see me? What if they find my kayak instead, which I can't see anywhere around? And so you never know when those moments and moments of clarity come to you of this calculus, the synapse is firing, everything is lit up in your mind, you absorb everything. I chose to go deeper into the bay. So I started sculling. And the boat came, and then the boat went right by me. They didn't
Oh
see me.
man.
And I knew I was in some serious trouble. Now I'm in 100% vested in the boat. And so I followed the boat down the bay. And a little while later, they turned around, saw me with a spotlight, and they pulled me out of the water. The propellers severed all the major muscles on the left side of my back and carved out 5 pieces of my spine, leaving me completely paralyzed from the waist down. That's why I do what I do today with those swims you talked about. I got out of the wheelchair. I'm not sure if your guests can see, but I'm standing today and I got out of the wheelchair. I swim because I got out of the wheelchair, and I swim for those who cannot.
Wow. I mean, as you're telling that, there were a couple of moments that I imagined myself in that position, and the fear that went through my body was real. Wow. That's intense, man.
I, I, Frank, I tell that story at certain speaking events, not all of them, but some of them, and I actually relive the feelings
Yeah.
when I'm telling it. It's visceral to me. I can hear that engine uh,
Hmm.
still, and I can feel the panic when the boat keeps going. And but
That's the moment.
I tell people that if that was the worst day of my life,
Hmm.
it was the inflection point because everything since then has been positive and good and has worked out perfectly. And I've come to make a significant difference in the lives of other people. And that's really been what my life's mission has been about for the
Yeah.
last 20 years.
That's incredible, man. Incredible. We're going to put a pin in the organization and come back to that because I want to hear more about the spinal cord organization and the good
Sure.
work you do. But going back to your working life, when you were the chief financial officer of a huge company, tell me what that was like. What was it like leading an organization like that?
Our organization, I started there in my early 30s. It was just under $30 million. I left last year at $250 million in revenue. We'd grown to almost 700 people, and we became stronger as we got bigger. We could identify we 30 we were kind of like teenagers. We were a little rebellious. We didn't know what we wanted to do. We didn't have a real lane. We kind of went all over the place, let our hair grow long and stayed out late. But when you get a little bit bigger, a little more mature, you have to make better choices, right? You can't stay out drinking until 2 in the morning and expect to pop up at 7. So we had to be a little more disciplined. And so that's what happens as organizations get a little bit bigger. You have to follow a little more discipline to make sure that you achieve the goals that you want because you now have a lot more lives dependent on you. At
Mm,
this point, we had 700 lives. And if you take that beyond it, we've had probably 2,000 people with their family members dependent on us. We had to make better choices. And so it made me focus on becoming a better manager, a better leader
mm.
for that reason.
So interesting, while you weren't necessarily on the sales side, the fact that you were the number two guy in the company tells me that you had your fingers in everything to some degree or another, or at least a great awareness. How do you think AI will affect the sales side of your former company? Tell us a little bit about what the business was, please, and then what those salespeople and how you think AI will affect them.
Sure, sure. So we're in the energy efficiency business. We would go into homes and businesses and put in new lights, motors, drives, and the like,
Mhm.
heat pumps and the like. And that there's been an evolution in that business. There's an evolution in every business, so there should be. There are no more Willy Lomans going door to door.
Right.
So AI can replace Willy Loman, and I'm from Providence, so they all love me in Providence, just like Willy Loman.
Yeah.
I know he's a favorite of yours too.
Oh, yeah. What a great show.
So our what AI does for our business, that business Rise Group,
Hmm.
is it helps find the customers and get some of the clarifying questions out of the way earlier.
Okay.
It doesn't replace the salesperson, but it clarifies a lot better what they should expect when the salesperson comes,
Okay.
qualifies the leads for us a lot better because not every house was eligible for the type of services we did. For example, if we were going to put a heat pump in, there would be some level of subsidy through the utility company.
Right.
It's part of their energy efficiency program. But not every house would be eligible for certain measures. But AI can help with that. And AI,
Mm.
so salespeople can use their AI as the tool, and we would use that through um, Salesforce and the proprietary programs that we wrote
Sure.
to get us there.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I've been saying the phrase that I'm using with folks is you should lean into technology, but don't lean on it. Like it won't do the job for you. My feeling has been that, we'll see where the evolution of this goes, but I think that salespeople um, who fit that mold where they're relying on the tech and they're just blasting out a million emails from their contact management system, or they're downloading a ton of names off of Zoom info and just emailing them without any personal touch to it, will be relegated to the bottom of the heap. They'll be competing on price and price alone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what,
If they compete on price, they haven't qualified that the person has any interest in it yet.
right, right.
Um, so we have a different business that we had one. I have to use past tense now. I've left,
Yeah,
right? But they have a different business that would be in the laboratory testing business,
right.
testing water, soil samples, and construction samples.
Mm-hmm.
No AI involved in that right now
Right.
because each each client is operating a project and they require not just sales but project management to go along with it. And
Okay.
so AI hasn't crept into that sales cycle yet. It has into the reporting cycle. So in the back end,
Mm-hmm.
and and knowing what you talk about with respect to AI and sales, it the place that it falls short, AI falls really short in my estimation, is I can't judge how good the people are behind you by what AI tells me.
Okay.
That's best learned through sales and understanding
Mm-hmm.
it. And that's what I don't I think will be the Rubicon that AI will get stuck at. Won't be able to cross that good salespeople can.
Right, right. So speaking of good salespeople, with all of the folks that came through your organization, um, think about who were among the one or two best you've ever seen, and what was it about them that made them best? What qualities can you identify in them that made them the best?
Sure. So I'll go back in time. I'll be like Romper Room. I'll grab my magic mirror. And I see Timmy and I see Michael and I see
Oh my
um
Lord.
it's the I guess if I was going to reduce it to one word, it's tenacity. The best salespeople I know are tenacious. 40% of salespeople don't go contact a person a second time.
Right.
10% go after them the 8 times and stop. There, they have to be tenacious. They have to look at sales like a labyrinth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not every path leads to the exit.
Right.
But every time you learn something from the client, you learn that that path was a dead end. Don't stop at the end going, duh, duh, duh. No, you walk your way back to where you knew you had fertile ground and go find the next path.
Okay.
And that's what great salespeople do, in my estimation. Great salespeople, it's, I don't like the word, they don't take no for an answer because sometimes no is the right word to hear.
Sure.
Because no means I can't go down that path. But what about that path?
Right.
Tenacity. That's the word that differentiates the best salespeople from someone just sells.
Our mutual friend Anthony Steers was talking about being polite. So what I want to qualify with tenacity, because you're right, and I think it was Coolidge that said persistence above all else is what wins the day. So persistence, tenacity, these are the fundamental ingredients. But what Anthony was saying about being polite, we do have to be careful not to fulfill that stereotype that the media has so poorly created of this pushy salespeople. And I've had a lot of salespeople say to me, I never want to be pushy. I don't want to be that person. You can be persistent and tenacious without being pushy, can't you?
Of course. Yes, I don't think I used the word, that you had to have fangs out
Yeah.
when you talk to them. No, or that you need to be a gnat that people have to swat away.
Right.
But good salespeople, in my mind, part of being tenacious is you always have something little to offer, a
Yeah.
little bit more piece of new information, a little breadcrumb you can give to them that keeps you relevant in their mind.
Yeah.
It's not 6 phone calls in a row. Did you get to that proposal yet? That's
Right.
not it. That
Right.
doesn't help.
That's
Instead
not
of helping,
persistent. That's pesky, like the
that's
gnat.
pesky. That's being a gnat. And
Yeah.
we all don't like gnats.
No. No, nobody likes that. And you got to treat people the way you would want to be treated.
Right.
So I
I
just read a
say,
statistic not long ago that said that AI can do 45% of a CEO's job better than the CEO, which I
well,
found super
what's the
interesting.
CEO, what's the CEO's job? Let's define that first.
Well, I that's what I found interesting. I think that when you it's almost I'm going to equate it to, with Cooley's Anemia Foundation, I spent a lot of time with scientists and doctors, and I find that doctors that used to take care of a patient with thalassemia are spending an enormous amount of time applying for grants and making sure that what they're doing fits within the board restraints of what the hospital has. So there's all this nudgy administrative stuff. And I think that's what this study was referring to, that the things that a CEO does that are strictly as administrative, comparative, matrices, things like this, maybe getting those results from AI and letting the CEO do what my estimation is the most important thing, and that's people.
I think the same way. 95% of all decisions in a corporation can get made by lieutenants. The CEO's one of their primary functions is they make the hardest decisions. They make the hardest calls.
Right.
And that takes us to the difference between managing and leading.
Okay.
Right? Leaders and managers are two different things. A CEO is a leader. Those decisions are path strategic driven. Managers can make the other decisions. And I think you're right that AI can help provide the data,
Right.
but AI doesn't yet have, in my estimation, the ability to think through the logic of a strategy to see the same, and with understanding the human influences that a CEO can. That's what it misses.
Yeah, and when you go back to whether it was Drucker or I don't remember who coined the phrase management by walking around.
Yeah,
But when I think about CEOs, to me, that's the thing, is walking up to your logistics desk and saying, so how's it going? What's getting in your way today? What can I help you? Like getting that intel from your people and then creating that sense of camaraderie, teamwork, togetherness, I care about you. I think that's a pretty big function of a CEO.
I firmly agree. I used to consider my primary job to be moving rocks. That's what I
Okay.
would call it. Whatever rocks that you came against, when the tide went out, we see all those rocks in the bottom, and you can't get through the navigate through. My job was to move them, figuring that most managers aren't looking to move the rocks themselves. They might be pretty content right where they are,
Right.
right? We don't want that. So I move the rocks. And if you notice my sandy beach here,
Yeah.
there are no rocks out there. We've moved them all already.
Right. Everything is an ocean analogy. This is what I'm learning.
We're
From a
navigating
from
challenging currents, baby.
from a tremendously gifted swimmer and hard practice swimmer, I should say. So, I was thinking about having, with you coming on and your role in teaching people leadership and strategies for companies. And our podcast is directed at professional salespeople, but My definition of selling is the ability to communicate to other people so that they will part with resources like money, time, and expertise that I need to complete the project that I'm going to complete. And I backed that up with a Dan Pink study that said people in non-selling roles spend 45% of their day selling. And that is getting other people to part with
Oh, yeah.
resources to help them achieve what they want to do. So even with all the data that you can gather, these are the skills that matter. Yeah.
Absolutely. I did not have a direct sales role. That's not entirely true. I did run several different operations, but by and large, I didn't have a direct sales role. However, I constantly felt the requirement to sell, and whether it's selling in terms of a product, but more so, it's in terms of an idea, a path, a
Right.
model that I need people to come with. If I went to my IT people and I said, okay, we're going to design our IT department with three components. We're going to run, we're going to drive, and we're going to transform. Okay,
Hmm.
so where are we on this scale here? Which are you going to go with? And so, but that takes salesmanship, but it
Yeah.
also takes leaders to understand the temperature of the market, the players that they have that they're with, understand themselves, which is really self-actualization is what's going to make good salespeople and good leaders. If you don't
Mhm.
know your strengths and your weaknesses well enough to articulate them, then you're going to have a problem articulating your product to other people. I've always thought about.
That's a great point. And I've watched, I had a salesperson once who was like, if you watch The Sopranos,
Mhm.
he could have been in the cast. So we're in New
Eh,
York City.
was he the Jersey crew or the New York crew?
He was in the New York crew.
Okay.
With the requisite Italian last name, 100 pounds overweight and affable, and everybody loved him. So this guy walked into an account. I was the sales manager at the time, and we walked into an account, and the principal of the company, it was a warehouse-based business distributor, and she was at her desk eating lunch. And this guy came in and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mrs. White. I caught you during your lunch." And he walked right up to her desk and he said, looked at her meal, which was a burger and fries, and said, "You mind?" And took a French fry off her. God is my witness. And she laughed. Now, Trent, the reason I bring up that story, because he got the deal, but the reason I bring up that story is because if I walked in and took a French fry off her plate, I'd have been thrown out. I don't have, that's the self actualization part you're talking about. I can't do what Tony did in that situation.
It's
Only
not you.
Tony can do Tony.
That's right.
Frank has to do Frank. So, what can I learn from people as I watch them, my mentors? I can learn skills. I can learn to be comfortable in my own skin, like Tony was. I can glean from him some things, but I can't imitate him. You know what I'm saying?
That's
That's
exactly
that
right.
self actualization part that I agree with you is so important.
You can read all the sale books in the world, and out of each one, if you can get one piece of information
Right.
that can close the gap in your self-actualization, that's great. But
Hmm.
you can't mimic. You have your own style.
Yeah.
I gotta be me.
Yeah. No, that's true. You've got to do it in your own way. I say that all the time. When I was learning, I was being taught sales. When somebody said, hey, I've got to, gee, this sounds good, Frank. Call me back on Tuesday after I talk to my accountant, wife, priest, significant, whatever. And I would be like, okay, no problem. Having no idea that these folks were just getting me out of the office most times and not necessarily, you know, really wanting to talk to somebody. So I had a boss who said to me, when somebody says to you, I got to talk to my accountant, say, well, what do you got to talk to your accountant about? Who owns the business, you or him? I'm like, are you out of your mind? I could never say that to someone. It's the rudest thing I've ever heard in my life. My mom didn't
Yeah,
raise me like that. But that worked for that guy.
sure.
If you have the personality that you can pull that off, like Tony eating a fry off the plate. For me, I had to find a way to not leave, but at the same time be comfortable in my own skin and say, hey, Trent, I can understand that. If I were making a purchase like this, I would want to talk to my accountant as well. Imagining that he'll agree with your decision, are you inclined to go forward with this? How do you feel? Yeah, I do. And then maybe I'm working my way into a signature at that point without the
Sure.
accountant. But I had to do it in a different way.
People, yes, they all have their own style. I'm thinking about the best sales experience I had
Hmm.
was I was a young controller, and I thought I needed three quotes for my insurance policy. I was new on my job, and so of course that's what you need to do, get three quotes.
Right.
And so I brought one gentleman in, and we're talking for a few minutes. He may have been in for less than 15 minutes. He had this big Bob Ross fro going. He looked like you could have John Holmes in one of those movies. And we're talking, and he starts packing his stuff. He goes, "What's the matter?" And he said, "You're not ready to fire your agent yet." I said, "When you're ready to fire your agent, call me, and we'll have a conversation."
Wow.
And that seed planted with me. So that's 30 years ago. And I've used this line on everybody that calls and asks for my business. They'll call me, "We've got the best rates you can." I'm not ready to fire my agent yet, because that agent built up trust. And by the way, the man with the Bob Ross fro, a couple years later, I did have a problem. And I called him, and I was with him for 25 years until he retired.
Yeah. What's interesting is being able to say that, and I counsel salespeople about this all the time. You've got to build enough of a pipeline so that you can call it when it's not a fit.
Mhm.
The worst thing you can do, and desperation is what drives that, right? If you haven't got a big enough hot list, you don't have a prospect list that's because you didn't do the work, then you're going to try to fit that square peg in a round hole, and everybody suddenly you want to be your client, but not everybody is your right client. And
That's right.
being able to walk away, look at the integrity this guy had to tell you this, and you called him back years later because of that, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And it became a great fit. And what I learned about that, and it goes back to my prior point, that's not something AI can do. And that's not a place AI can go. AI can't read that room, because all AI is going to do is I'm going to tell you what I need to tell you,
Right.
and didn't listen. This person not only listened, but then convinced me that he wasn't selling me a product, because the products were insurance policies. They are almost commodities, not quite. What you get is who's behind the product
Right.
when something happens. And that's what I was sold on. I was sold on a team, not a product. And I think as AI um, integrates more into business, excellent salespeople have to be able to say, here's the team. Here's who supports you. We
Mhm.
are a family coming to you. We're not a bunch of zeros and ones that are being spit out in a terminal.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the guy who says this the best for me, and I've quoted him on stage 30 different times. The president of the Rummel Agency in Michigan, Larry Michael, and he looked at me and he said about insurance, and he said, Frank, who are they going to call on their worst day? And he said it with such sincerity. I went, oh my goodness, if God forbid I had a catastrophic event at my house, do I want to call an 800 number? Do I want to interact with a bot online? Or do I want to call Larry? Say, Larry, this is what happened. Hey, Frank, I'll be right there. I got you. That's what you want, right? So
That's
that's, I mean, exactly what you just said, and Larry articulated so beautiful. Who are you going to call on your worst day? You got to have a team behind you. You have to have people behind you, and that's something that I still feel is irreplaceable. Now, Trent, you and I are in a tough spot because we're not 25 years old. So
wait,
when we talk
what?
about, well,
What?
you're 26, but when we talk about this stuff, I often say people listening may imagine that I want them to take out, a feathered quill and an inkwell to sign contracts with. But I'm a technology guy. I love You know,
Yes, you
all
are.
the tech I use, I've got a couple different CRMs and different cadences that they perform with. And the assistant that I hired, I work through Payoneer. She's in Pakistan. Now she's in the UK. Like, I love what the tech has brought me, but I'm understanding what Larry articulated and what you just said. And that's, the people in the team.
Sure. Frank, I bought in my role as CFO, I was on the buy side almost constantly.
Right.
Let me tell you about Larry. I'll pay more for Larry.
Mm.
I'll pay more for Larry than Larry would probably even be asking for.
Wow.
That's how much it becomes worth it to me to have what you just described. And that's what a lot of salespeople may not appreciate. There's more money there. The salesperson that cuts themselves down too fast, giving it away. If you have the right value behind it, I'm going to pay for it. And I represent thousands of other buyers, millions of other buyers behind there. If you can solve that problem, more money, more problem. I say it the other way around, but more problem, more money.
Trent, I love you, man. That was so well said. As a CFO, constantly buying, to literally say price is not the ultimate objective. And that's salespeople, open up your ears and hear what Trent just said. Bring value, value, value. Bring you. Listen, people are buying you. Even no matter what I'm ever selling, even back when I was selling copying machines, everybody could, they all do the same thing. I think they're all made in the same factory, and then they slap stickers on
They do.
Cat,
And put the
Toshiba,
stamp label on
Rico.
it.
Doesn't matter. But you're buying me. I'm going to take care of you. I'm not going to show up when the lease ends. I'm going to check on you. I'm going to make sure that this happened, that happened. All the promises that we gave are fulfilled, right? So that's what people are buying. And Trent, you just said that beautifully. I hope my team cuts that out and posts that all over the place because that was extraordinarily well said. Thank you.
Thanks. I have so this the same Bob Ross Afro man that I was with for 25 years. I was at a restaurant, the lounge a couple weeks ago, talking to a dear friend in a different organization.
Right.
He was telling me a problem he had with Bob Ross's insurance company.
Okay.
And I said, I've never had that experience. I've had only the best and most positive experiences for a quarter century. And he said, it felt like they ignored me.
Ah.
And then when I told him I was looking to go somewhere else, it's only then they reacted. So
Hmm.
let's go back to Larry. You said Larry made regular check ins. Larry understood you. You understand your client. Selling is only part of the deal,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Maintaining it is an even greater piece.
Yeah.
As tenacious as we are, salespeople need to be to find their way out of the labyrinth. If you imagine you have people you're leading through the labyrinth, you have to make sure you're shepherding them with you.
Oh,
That's
yeah, 100%, man. You sell yourself, you sell your company, you sell your product, is the old sales adage, but it's the most important thing because when I go out to meet someone, I want them to know that I'm there because you don't need me for information. AI's got me. Google's
that's
got me.
exactly right.
You know as much about my product as I know when I show up. You don't need me for information. You can point and click. Oh, geez, you can buy a car on Amazon right now.
Yes, you can.
So what do you need me for? You need me for the nuance, that human to human nuance that you and I have been talking about. That's really what the big deal is.
Yeah. I don't need someone to tell me their leather seats.
Right.
See their leather seats.
Right.
Thank
I
you
can
very
click on
much.
options and build my own
Yeah,
product.
that's exactly right.
I
That's
say
exactly
that to real estate people all the time. I'm fortunate to be able to talk in front of real estate groups here and there. And I say it all the time. If you're taking a client and walking them to the house and saying, and this is the living room, you better check yourself.
that's
That's not your job. Your job happened before you got to the house. It's
that's exactly right.
qualifying. Am I worth your time? It's asking all the questions about me and what I'm really looking for, and then narrowing it down, right? To make it a customized experience for me. That's your value.
Yep, absolutely right. And considering you're speaking, and my hiring, if your audience doesn't know it, I hired you to come speak to
Yes.
my organization,
Hmm.
and you gave an exceptional speech that had to do with for about an hour that had to do with understanding we're selling at all levels here. We're not just selling at the front line because my organization had a limited number of people that were frontline sellers and a lot more people that were behind the scenes that were customer facing.
Right.
And it's those customer facing people that you were really honed in on that didn't know that they were selling, but really are at every step. You did a great job, Frank. We were really thrilled with it.
That's really nice of you. Thank you. Yeah, I had a great time with them too. If you had to give a piece of advice to a brand new salesperson, couple of things, what kind of way, what would you guide them? What would you tell them is important to focus on? Like, what could you say to them today?
Go into a different industry. Go to finance. The annuities are a lot better.
There you go. There you go.
No, I would say this. Selling is not about how good you can talk. Oh, I started there. It's not how good you can talk. I used to think that, Frank, I don't know if you know this, but I sold timeshare in my early 20s.
Wow, yeah. I think I
You know how
remember
good of
you
a
telling me
timeshare
that.
salesman I was?
I can't imagine.
Atrocious. I was absolutely atrocious because at 22 years old, I thought it was about how good I could tell a story to them.
Right.
So the three things that new salespeople have to do, right? And none of them has to do with talking. One is that you have to walk into every sales opportunity prepared.
Hmm.
Two, you have to be willing to keep your mouth closed and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Three, you have to be willing to nod when they say no and ask a different question.
That's
You do those three things and you'll be successful.
that's fabulous. You know, it's really not about the stereotypical bad archetype that's out there in the movies. It's not a silver-tongued devil. It's those that ask good questions and listen well are the salespeople that are most successful.
Right. I learned from somewhere a little flashcard I got in my early 20s that said no one ever listened themselves out of a sale.
There you go. That's perfect. Well, Trent, I mean, I'm going to put a pin in it right there because that was just masterful what you just advised to young salespeople. Tell us, what are things that you want us to know about your organization, Durable Medical Goods? Let's go there, and then we'll go to how to contact you and other things. But tell us a little bit more about your organization.
Sure. I I fundraise for the United Spinal Association that operates out of the Boston office at Spaulding Hospital.
Hmm.
Anybody that has a spinal cord injury in New England is going to go there.
Okay.
And this organization is peer to peer, meaning if you have an L4 break, they'll connect you with somebody that had one.
Wow.
So that way you can talk about, well, how do you brush your teeth? How do you how do you communicate to your family? And then after a couple of years, they ask you to come back and pay it forward to the next generation. And the reason I support this is when I was after my accident, got home, I had to have a medical bed put in my couldn't go upstairs. We moved the living room out. It cost $1,200 a month,
Wow.
no insurance, 20 years ago.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there are a lot of these items for spinal cord people that aren't covered because the difference with a spinal cord injury than any other one, and not to be disparaging of other illnesses, but with a spinal cord injury, in 1 second, your life just changed.
Yeah.
And everything you knew is over. It takes more than you know to start again. And so that's why I help. And all my swims raise money for it. We're going to plan another swim in 2026. It'll be my fifth one. We've raised nearly $500,000 and we give it away in $4,000 grants
Oh, that's
to,
fabulous.
to people
So
that
if
need it.
somebody wants to contribute, they go to SCI?
They go to sciboston.org
Okay. That's
and
great.
my back to block fund, B2B fund, kind of like the title on your book right there.
Right.
It is where you go and they will and
That's fabulous.
they'll apply it to that.
And then for Trent, where do we find you? We want to contact you. What do you want us to know about getting a hold of you and what you're doing these days?
Well, first off, you can see my website right on my picture here, and
Hmm.
that's my website. I enjoy speaking on stages. I talk about resiliency. I help companies navigate challenges and growth and change. But one of the items that I've really started to focus on in the last year and a half is I developed a SAIL methodology, SAIL, for storytelling. A SAIL represents structure, authenticity, impact, and laughter. And I've started speaking to more and more companies about this, about how to connect through stories. The facts tell, stories sell. And this is how I help organizations connect. So, for example, I'm going to the Insights Association National Northeast chapter at the end of this month, scientists. And I'm going to explain to them how to take their raw data, and if they need capital allocated to their project, how to make an impact on that audience to get more capital towards them. It's not always the facts that drive that, but you have to be able to have some impact. And so I'm gaining good traction with organizations through this type of training.
That's fabulous. Man, oh man. You know, Trent, I emphasize so much to salespeople about the giving back aspect of and I'll say this way, what I expect them to do. You know, I think if God gave you talents in leadership, sales, organization, whatever it is, and whatever you consider God, the universe, if you have these talents, you owe it back to work with somebody like SCI Boston. So I applaud you for doing that. And the fact that you got back on your feet is just extraordinary. The perspective that you have for having felt what those people feel, you know, gives you an empathy that other people can't even imagine.
It's humbling. And it motivates me. It really motivates me to continually to help people, particularly with that affliction.
Yeah.
And I know you have your magnificent cause at Cooley's that you are wholly invested in. And I think that message is right, Frank, that where the opportunity exists, we should all take it because we're all richer because of it.
Perfect. Thanks, Trent. I appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me, friend. Be well.
Ready to take your sales team or event to the next level? Visit franksomma.com to discover how Frank can coach your top performers, deliver a tailored workshop for your team, or captivate your audience with a content-packed keynote at your next event. Frank's best-selling book, B2B is really P2P, is now available on Amazon and Frank's website. Here's a special offer. As a valued listener, mention this podcast when you contact Frank and receive a 10% discount on your first coaching session, keynote, or workshop booking.
that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Selling in the Age of AI. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all of the topics we discussed, and of course, to connect with our amazing guests. I have to shout out big love to my production team, Neeks, Angelo, Nico of Digital Presence. You guys rock. If you want your digital presence to explode, check these guys out at digitalpresence.team. And until next time, remember, people can't point and click you. Be the difference maker for your prospects and clients.